You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV about New Jersey. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Jody. And this season, we're talking about the Showtime series, Yellowjackets. And today, we're recapping Season 2, Episode 4, Old Wounds.
It is a big day here for two reasons. One is my podcast within a podcast, Hatch Watch 96. We've got big news this episode. But before we get into that, we have our first guest. Josh Gondelman is a writer and comedian. He's worked on shows like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He also served as a head writer and executive producer on Desus and Mero. He's the author of Nice Try, Stories of Best Intentions and Mixed Results, which is just a collection of really lovely and hilarious essays, one of which was, Jody, one of the first things you and I bonded over, I think, last year. He debuted his comedy special, People Pleaser, which was produced by Comedy Dynamics, and that means you can watch it just about anywhere.
It's for free on YouTube right now.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And you should watch it. It's wonderful and so funny. He's also a shit out of Yellowjackets fan. Welcome to the podcast, Josh Gondelman. Hi, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Buzz, as it were. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Love to talk Yellowjackets.
Super excited.
It's such a... The show has like struck such a chord with Andrea and I, and so every time I find out someone else is into Yellowjackets, I'm like, oh yes, instantly I understand you.
I honestly wish more people were talking about it because I felt like season 1 I had found kind of a vocal community of fans, and then in the I guess a little over a year, right, probably 14 or 15 months since the season 1 finale, I've like forgotten who that is. And so and with like Twitter kind of disintegrating, it feels like a much more difficult experience to have.
That is one of the big sads of Twitter becoming what it's become, is like those, live watching communities on like a Sunday night when suddenly everybody's like, on Succession or Yellowjackets or something.
And the only problem with Yellowjackets, and I hope they don't stop doing this, it does make for less of a unified viewing experience. But I like that they put the episodes out on Fridays on demand. So you can kind of watch it through the weekend. But
although as someone in their 40s, feeling like I need to watch something when it drops at midnight is very stressful for me. It ruins the whole day the next day, but I sometimes have to do it.
We watched this week's episode Friday evening at about 7:30, and that did it. I hadn't seen anyone else talk about it, but it's also, I think Yellowjackets and Succession this season premiered same day, same time. So like, I'd rather have this opportunity to watch flexibly than have it just get kind of like wiped out by Succession enthusiasm on the timeline. So this is better, but I still kind of wish I wish it were like 10 o'clock on Sundays, or they just staggered out.
Yeah, no, what it leads to is me watching the episode at 12:30 in the morning on melatonin for the first time every time. And that's a different experience.
Yeah, totally.
Probably not what they intended.
No, but I imagine it kind of like gives you that dreamy Yellowjackets quality that so many of the sequences share.
Yeah, I often wonder the next day, like what part of it was real and what I hallucinated half asleep on the
and then which
melatonin.
The characters hallucinated. So it's like,
I mean, like unreliable narrators all over the place.
A turducken of fantasy.
Yes. Exactly.
It is. Jody brought the show to me in January. I didn't see any of the first season. I somehow missed it, despite being obsessed with New Jersey and the 90s and being a queer woman from Jersey. I don't know how I missed it, but I watched all of the first season in 2 days, and then I watched all of it with COVID. It was a perfect viewing experience for the show. But so this is my first time watching it episode by episode every week, and it's also the first show I've watched this way, I think maybe since Lost, which I know is the show everybody compares this one to. Sure.
But I think it like demands is a hard word to use, but I think it like inspires that kind of viewing, right? Like, and I'm especially glad that it wasn't released on like a bingier model, because I think it would come. I would not have watched it probably, and that's just because I very rarely watch like a full season of TV
Absolutely.
that like over a weekend, especially a drama, like an hour-long drama. And so my inclination is like, well, I guess the tides have washed that away for me. Like
exactly.
everybody watched it 3 weeks ago and I missed it, and now it's gone.
And now it's gone
Yeah.
forever for me. Yeah, same.
This would have been a rough, like I did a rewatch of this in a couple of days to get ready for this season. I got watched season 1 in a couple of days, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it's really heavy.
It's emotional.
There are, I feel like there are things that keep me in it, because I'm to return to something that you alluded to earlier. I'm incredibly squeamish.
Yes.
And I'm
I wanted to ask you about this because I have a hard time with horror normally.
It's tough. I also have a hard time with horror, and I have a hard time with moments of this show. But I feel like it rarely kind of like revels in the gore in a way, or like surprises you with gore. Like I think you're like, oh, this bad thing's about to happen. Oh, it happened, and it looks bad. And so like that kind of helps me too. And it's nothing against horror. It's just like not for me.
No.
I'm too easily shaken up. And so it could be, so I would definitely not, it's not a show that I'm inclined to watch like 3 episodes of in a row. We watched the first half of season 1 pretty quickly, but it still, I think, was like maybe 1 episode a day for the first, because we found it like midway through season 1, and then maybe watch 2 in a night to catch up so we could start watching live. But yeah, I do think there have been more stressful shows that I've watched. Like I found Breaking Bad, the structure of each episode of that show to be like, and to end on maximum stress. And so that was always like very emotionally taxing. And then the one that I couldn't finish, and this might be surprising because it's not a gore thing at all, is I had real trouble, and this show is so well done, and it's a testament to how good it is, that I had trouble just like plumbing my own emotional depths week after week. Was I recently tried to watch Halt and Catch Fire. And I got like a season and a half in, and I just found the way that the characters were like constantly sabotaging themselves and each other, and like creating these like horrible emotional entanglements and driving wedges between themselves and each other was like so harrowing to me that I got a season and a half in and was like, I gotta tap out. This just is like excruciating because it's so well drawn.
Right.
Well, and with something like Breaking Bad, there's like no release valve.
Yes.
Like there's occasional moments of like Jesse being Jesse.
Yep.
But there's not like, this is the thing Andrea and I have talked about a bunch, which is the mixture of like 90s camp with like actual interpersonal trauma and like relationships. That 90s camp is the thing that makes it possible for me to watch it.
Yeah, there's a real puncturing of tension in addition to the creating, and I think a show like Breaking Bad kind of ratchets it up and up, and it's less, I think even the moments of levity on that show are less a release of tension and more like a respite, if that makes sense. Like you get a very fun Walt and Saul scene, and that like gives you a little break from the intensity of it, but it never deflates what it's building to in a way that like I think is just a different successful way to do things, but I do think with something this intense where it's like cannibalism and like murder and it is,
and like attempted abortions in the woods, like that. I mean, totally, that to me was the hardest scene to watch all over. Like that was worse than The Feast of Jackie.
Totally. And that and I think that because it's so gruesome, like the intensity gets so gory and gruesome, it is nice to have a moment like there's no book club.
Exactly.
And they like really big laughs. There have been a few, I mean, like even this season with Misty and what's his name?
Walter.
Todd? What's it? Walter.
But it could be Todd. It's like kind of the same thing.
Hit him now. It's like so funny. And it is like a real release from like, oh, this thing they're doing is so intense. And then she's just like so over the top about it. And it's really fun.
Well, and like that cheesy montage in this episode, which I'm sure we'll get to, of the two of them with the split screen.
Oh,
both getting ready for bed. Like, it was just so silly. Like I think I've heard some complaints that the show is sort of uneven in tone, but I've argued that it's actually very purposeful, that they're kind of alternating between those two things.
Yes.
So
Yes. I think that is, and I don't find it to be inconsistent. Like I find it seems like it's it's like a mint chocolate chip ice cream where you're like, oh, the chocolate chips don't make the ice cream inconsistent in texture. They add a different texture to it.
Every now and then you need to crunch on something.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think I'm trying to think, there's a show that we watched recently where I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling right now. Like I don't know. I wish I could remember what it was, but it just felt so.
Was it The Watcher?
It was not The Watcher, but that I think I saw just snippets of that while my wife was watching it. But like there was a show that was like, I'm like, I don't know how seriously I'm supposed to take the serious parts. I don't know if these parts that I think are funny are supposed to be funny and campy, or if it's like kind of a swing and a miss at like heightened drama. But I think Yellowjackets, I think this season, even more than last, has like a handle on what it wants the audience to be feeling.
It's a show, it feels to me, I don't know if this is just something that, because I'm so invested in the like 90s of the whole thing, that I want this to be the case, but it feels to me in tone a lot like those like movies like I think I've said on the podcast even something like Death Becomes Her or Serial Mom or those shows where they can be really like dark and gruesome, but also really aware of the comedy and letting both of those things kind of carry equal weight. And I think we don't see that as often anymore. And maybe that's why people who are either a little younger or, aren't as interested in those kinds of movies, why it feels a little uneven to them.
Yeah,
totally.
I mean, this is like I've assigned Andrea to watch the movie Heathers as research for our show. But it's that same kind of thing. Like it's the dark comedy plus gruesomeness plus like some really, really silly moments.
Yeah. And I think it all works together pretty harmoniously. I think I'm sure we'll get to it once we start, but there are some points where I'm like, ooh, I wonder where this element is, what these elements are building towards. But I think tonally I'm so rarely like, ooh, is this supposed to be scary or fun? It's like fun scary and like scary fun and like it I don't know what about it brings this out of me, but it like makes me understand what people enjoy about horror. Like it for whatever reason where I'm like, ooh, I like the tension and I like the how, not necessarily the like physical gore. Again, that's not like the appeal for me, but I get why it's there, and I like the you're right. I like the tension. I like the release. I like the like, ooh, like edge of your seat feel. And it's, I think they do that really well. And it's so rare that you're like, oh, they really biffed this choice. Like they tried to make this scary and it turned out stupid, or like they tried to make this funny and it ended up like too real. Yeah, I think they're really on it. Like Misty doing the speech from Steel Magnolias as like a baby shower gift is like, that's exactly it, right? Like it's like that.
I died.
They're kind of losing their minds and like making these weird teenage choices at their wits' ends. And it's like really like, that's funny, but then you come back and they're all like, wow, that was really good. And like, it is campy, right? That they like actually came around and enjoyed it, but that's part of the pleasure of the show, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a much more interesting choice than another round of like, oh, Misty again.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it's very fun to watch her take this like big swing and then have the girls kind of like, oh, what's she doing? And then like, wow, that was so beautiful.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we jump in to?
Yeah, we should probably jump in because I could talk about the
sure.
generally
Yes,
forever.
sorry.
Please.
I've as not having been on the other episodes, I'm just like happy to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, we try to do like a general recap, but then also go off on all of these fun tangents.
So feel free to,
Great.
Yes, tangents are welcome.
Do you want to kick off 96, Jody?
Oh boy. Okay, let's do that. We're at the cabin. Apparently they have eaten the birds, which I wasn't sure they were going to, because they all died like relatively
mysteriously and ominously. A bunch of birds falling out of the sky onto a roof is like, that's not like, you're not like, oh, dinner's ready.
Right.
Under most circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, but if you just ate your friend, maybe you are.
Yeah, well, the fact that they ate them, and as far as we know, haven't gotten sick, does take one of our theories off the table in terms of, or at least it. I'm not sure, but our thought that maybe there's some environmental disease happening in the area, because it seems that the birds weren't affected by that, at least,
or like a mining thing. Although I don't know that either of us knows enough science.
I know that I don't, in fact.
Yeah, so they're at the cabin. There's a fun little shot of, I think it's Ben with like a little bird head in his cup, which is lovely. I think this scene is really just kind of setting up that the divisions are building and building and building. And Mari is sniping at Ben. Mari is making herself less and less enjoyable to be around every single day.
I still have a lot of fondness for Mari. I think I'm one of the few left, but
I mean,
I get her.
I think they're setting her up, though, to be like less and less likable every time we see her. But this is what leads to the challenge of the day, which is really the only focus of 96, is the let's send out Nat and Lottie to hunt and see who comes back with game, which there's one gun. And that's like, who was it? Mari says like, oh, but Lottie doesn't need a gun.
Lottie doesn't need a gun.
No.
Yeah, and Lottie's like, I don't.
She told the birds.
Yeah. And well, there's another slight thread that has a huge payoff in this that's not related to this challenge, right? But let's do the challenge.
Well, we could say now, we're talking about the missing bear meat. Is that?
Oh, I was gonna say the Van and Thaisa.
Ooh, yeah.
Van following Thaisa on her like midnight rambles.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Her midnight rambles. Yeah, no. So those are kind of the two threads that are happening, right? Like it seems like, actually, just to touch on the midnight ramble for a second, because it does seem like Van is now like they're working together to map this thing.
Well, I don't know that they're working together. I don't think Ty. It seems to me that Ty has not said, "When I wake up, you should follow me." I think Ty would prefer that when she wakes up, Van like ties her back down and says, "Go back to sleep."
Mm-hmm. And I think she doesn't seem like an enthusiastic participant in the mapping. Like when Van is like, "Oh, let's go to this last point on the map," right? So Van Ty is taking her out to these, inadvertently going to all these points where the symbol has been etched into trees and such, and it makes a bigger symbol on this map that Van has overlaid onto Ben and Nat's map, and she finds like, okay, here's this one place that we have to go to, and Ty feels very reluctant, I think, to like pursue this as a part of it. Feels related to her mistrust of the supernatural as manifested in Lottie and like all these other little like things that like might be signs or might just be coincidences. And so Ty, I think, is very much like, I not only do I think this is nothing, but more than that, I hope this is nothing.
Yeah. I wonder if it has to do something with, she seems to have been haunted by this kind of stuff her whole life and has been fighting it. Like seeing the man with no eyes, when her grandma was dying, like it just seems like this is not something she's just now pushing away, but she's been doing it her whole life. Of like, this isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real.
Yep.
Well, and it's interesting to look at her and Lottie together, because Lottie also, I think we see in this episode especially, I had thought that we were going to find Lottie to really lean into this role, and that adult Lottie was kind of an outgrowth of that. But Lottie is also pretty reluctant. When she goes out into the woods here, she's like, she stops and tries to commune with a symbol on the tree, and she's like, "Ah, fuck me," because she knows it's not that she knows it's fake. She's like clearly struggling with that, with whether or not she also wants it to be real and to work.
Yeah, it seems like the scope of the kind of supernatural talismanic power that some of the other Yellowjackets want to believe she has. Like, it seems like she believes that she's capable of some kind of spiritual, psychological aid, right, for the other teammates, but that there is a faction that believes her to be capable of like more than that, and intentionally manifesting more than that, and
causing the death of hundreds of birds.
Making the bear kneel down in front of her, and she seems to be. This is kind of the first time that we see that she's like kind of uncomfortable with that, right? And is like, ooh, I don't think this is all my purview in the way that, like, I think like blessing the hunt feels like a kind of thing that she does because she thinks it's like a good luck charm, or maybe she has like something like an OCD compulsion to do it. But this other stuff, she's like, oh no, this is above my pay grade.
Exactly, yeah.
To just go out hunting without a gun.
She's the first person to me who has looked suitably cold outside, though, for the first time.
Yeah.
Which,
well, other than Jackie.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. This is, like you said, Andrea, this is the first time we're starting to see the weight of the faith of the others kind of like landing on her a little heavily. Like Mari this is why I say like Mari's getting kind of ramped up, is like she's a true acolyte at this point. She's like, no, Lottie doesn't need a gun. Lottie will come back. Lottie will save us. And it's like Lottie's a 17-year-old girl? Like wandering in the woods, touching trees and hoping it does something. Like, I don't know, man.
So Nat and Lottie both, the hunt is not successful for either of them. We see them, so they're out in the woods. Lottie comes across one of the stumps, one of the magic stumps, and I think, is this the first time we see a full, like, intentional blood offering from her like this, as opposed to like when she smacks her head into the window or something like that?
Well, she's been putting her blood in the tea.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
Which is, as a squeamish person,
you're not drinking any
I thought
blood
you were going to say as a vegan for some reason.
It's really unethical.
Yeah, no, as a squeamish person, I could do without these scenes, to be completely honest with you, but I understand their purpose. But this is, I think, the first time we see her on her own, like not necessarily like performing it for someone, but just trying to do something to make this like magic happen. Yeah. Also, it seems like they've decorated this stump with some like trinkets or, you know, offerings.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't it where, because she ends up where the prop plane had been downed, right? So I wonder if that was partly like a memorial.
Oh.
Yeah, that's possible. It's so hard to know. There's so many like
stumps.
There's so many stumps. I wish we had a clear image of that map. I love maps, and I just would like to see a better sense of where we are and where they're going in the space. But I don't know, maybe we'll get that soon.
Yeah. And it seems like they're just kind of learning. Like, I think it's one interesting thing about it, right, is that Lottie truly doesn't know where she's going in the way that like Van kind of does now have a map, like a physical map, but like in her head she's been all these places now, in a way that Thaisa also instinctually seems to know where she's going, but like practically doesn't. And then there's the Nat and Travis mapping, so like, and then Ben, who doesn't experience the woods really anymore, but like knows the layout from these maps. So it's like an interesting feeling of like us, the audience, being out in the woods with the Yellowjackets who know where they're going versus the ones who like do not.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them that just seem to never leave the cabin.
Yeah. I would never leave. I would never leave. Absolutely not. You're no. That is, man, what a fascinating thought. And this isn't fully formed, but you talking about those different kinds of maps and the different sort of like pieces of the knowledge pie that each character has. And it's one of those things, this scene or this little whatever with Nat and Lottie out in the woods is a good example of how the kind of overlapping knowledge or lack thereof kind of gives us a bigger picture that they don't have. So Lottie makes the blood sacrifice and seemingly nothing really happens. Though at the exact same time, that's when Nat stumbles upon the moose frozen in the lake.
I knew they weren't going to get that moose out of the lake. No. A moose is so big. There's just no way they would generate the torque to bring it up above the ice without it caving in the ice. That's like 2 tons of wet moose probably, right? Like a moose is as big as a club.
Yeah, that's even heavier.
Yeah. And so that was an expedition that was doomed to fail.
Seriously.
Well, and especially because they didn't have everybody. I don't know that if they had everybody, they could overcome it anyway, but
No.
They've been eating
More of a
birds
chance.
and
That's
a
true,
little
too.
bit of person.
Yeah.
Like they don't have their max
There's
strength
no way.
either.
It was a
Right.
bad. Look,
No.
I get why they tried,
Yes, you
but
have
like,
to try.
Yeah.
but they would have had to like drag the moose to the shore,
Yeah.
cracking up the pond on the way to
Yeah.
get it close. Like their
And get
best
like a
chance.
crane or something.
Yes. Yeah, some kind of crane, some kind of pulley system.
Yeah,
But there's
exactly.
there's no way that 10 of them on ice were going to
No.
pull the moose up over that lip
Right.
without
No.
bringing them all in. No, not a
No,
chance.
I know. I currently live in New England and have yet to see a moose in person, but they are enormous.
Where in New
So-
England?
I live in Providence.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've been here a long time now, but
Oh, great.
yeah. It's a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was saying literally Andrea's drinking Dunkin' Donuts and I am not, and that seems
Hell yeah.
wrong.
I drank mine already this morning.
But yeah, so we've got them trying to pull the moose out of the lake. And then we've got Lottie's hallucination when she passes out from hypothermia.
And we get the
And
hatch
ends up-
that I have been
The hatch. Andrew's been waiting for a hatch.
for a hatch. It's a hatch show. You knew
And
it.
this is-
and here it is.
This is all in her imagination,
Yes.
right? Because that plane blew up
Yes,
it did.
memorably.
Yeah,
Yes.
big time.
Yes, one of the most memorable scenes of the first season, I think.
That was
A like darkly comic explosion.
Yeah.
It's like just like full cackle, but also just like oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. When Andrea was watching it for the first time, she was texting me the whole time with like reactions to it. And I was waiting for that moment.
For the plane to explode.
The plane to explode. Yeah. But of course, because they're from Jersey, her hallucination ends them up in the mall.
Do you think that was Paramus Park? If you had to guess what mall they were at, Jody?
It actually looked to me more like Garden State Plaza.
Okay,
It's a little bigger.
fancy.
But yeah, I don't think it was any of those. I think it was a place in
Yeah, I
Canada.
think they shot. Yeah, but
yeah, they end up in the mall. And it's a similar hallucination in some ways to Jackie's before she died, with everyone gathered around kind of greeting her. And but it feels a little more sinister in some ways. There's not that warmth of like, they're kind of like almost laughing at her and teasing her about her shoplifting habits. Yeah.
She felt very estranged from the other
Yeah.
teammates at the table, clearly.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Except for Laura Lee, who is kind of like offering her food and then not letting her eat it and telling her she has to go back, which I think that, with the Jackie scene, Jackie drinks the hot cocoa
Right.
and disappears into, disappears. So Laura Lee pushes Lottie back and says, no, like you can't stay here. And I think that that's what keeps her alive.
That consuming that's super interesting, Jody. I didn't think about that at all. But it's very like this scene feels, I'm not saying anything like new here, but she goes down the rabbit hole. Like they're having like a kind of like mad tea party experience there. Her not eating is such a like, how many stories like that are like, don't eat the food in whatever weird mystical land you end up, or you'll be stuck there forever. And Jackie does and dies, obviously, not because but symbolically.
Yeah.
And then-
And there's another interesting element of this hallucination is that the music is the theme song to the show, which is like a very specific choice, because it's not a motif that like comes up all the time on the score,
not at
as
all.
far as I know. It feels very much like you're watching something that's not real now.
Yeah. And they've had other ways of kind of indicating that here and there, but there's no like, there is the VCR skipping device that they do sometimes that comes up, but I think that there isn't necessarily always an indicator of what's real and what's not. And so this was very much like, this is not real. The
Right.
show's music is playing in this mall.
This is not Lottie manifesting something. This isn't like, this is not a supernatural thing. This is like her seeing something that is fully hallucinatory.
Yeah, totally. I loved that when I picked up the sound of the soundtrack coming through the mall speakers.
I thought
was
for the
cool.
first couple of seconds it was like a Muzak kind of like Molly version of it, which I thought was really funny, but then it quickly becomes this really even more haunting.
The Alanis Morissette cover, right?
Yeah, well,
That's
that
what it was?
plays over the opening credits for, and I was reading apparently that's like a one-off thing.
Yeah.
That Alanis, which is so cool, but such an odd choice. Like
I've like never really heard of that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope they get singer-songwriters of the 90s to do it every week, like a Simpsons couch gag.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
mean,
thinking of who else I would want to do this. No.
yeah. Well, because like, they had the Florence and the Machine's cover of Just a Girl that was part of the
Incredible.
promo for the season, which was an incredible cover.
Yeah,
Andrew and I
great cover.
talked about that. But like, yeah, it would be cool to see like who else could do that. I mean, I just think that this show is like made for Veruca Salt to just show up constantly. Like, I mean, it already did. We heard Seether last week, but I think that it would be interesting to hear their take on it.
Yeah, agreed. So she comes to, or doesn't even come to, she's rescued.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
She's rescued.
they bring her back to the cabin where Nat is being warmed in a tub. And Shauna goes into the other room, right? Says to Nat she'll be right back. And then Lottie shows up on death's door, and Nat is out of the tub, giving it to Lottie fully dressed. And they have like a moment of like, good game.
It's
Good game.
one of my favorite
That was
moments
so
of this
sweet.
series so far.
Yeah, because it reminds you this is like a competitive girls soccer team.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
is, like going to nationals. Like they actually have this other side of them that they've built up over all these years.
Yeah.
I
And
love
it's-
that part.
I one thing that I love about this episode and this season is that we're kind of seeing like these convergent paths for Nat and Lottie in both timelines. We'll get to the second one. And then we're also seeing these weird parallel tracks of Thaisa and Lottie. Thaisa, who cannot stop having these inexplicable mystical experiences, and Lottie, who seems to be kind of like forcing and pretending at times to be having these things and like intentionally cultivating them. And I think like those, Lottie as like that kind of fulcrum for the other characters, like relationships to themselves and each other and the supernatural, is like a really cool, she's like a really cool spoke for that to all be tangent to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think even more so because she seems to be a reluctant spoke.
Well, yes, I think it's getting more and more interesting. The like more Lottie feels like enlisted into being like a navigator through the spirit realm, right? And then it's getting more and more interesting. And I think the play with that in this season feels like very in control. Or in season one, I kind of, maybe it wasn't the creators of the show doing this, and maybe it was just like what the settling in was, but I spent a lot of time being like, what am I supposed to think about these supernatural things?
Right.
And now I feel like a lot more certain about where there's uncertainty and where there's like narrative certainty.
Yeah.
And so that I like that kind of firm footing to be like, ooh, this feels like a question mark and this feels like I know what's going on. And even if that flips at some point, I like not feeling out to sea.
Yeah, I think that I spend too much time on Reddit because of this show, and I need to stop doing that. But there is that conversation of like, is it supernatural? Is it not? And I'm like, it could be both. It could be neither. It's like, let's just ride it out. And, because I wouldn't feel like that if I didn't think that the creators like that we're in good hands.
Yes.
Like that I feel like they are taking us somewhere. They know where they're taking us, and they're not going to just leave things hanging that don't make any sense.
Yes. And I feel like the beginning of season 2 kind of resolved some of my lingering season 1, like, what am I supposed to be thinking? And so I like that. And I'm like excited for the ride rather than like, give me answers now. And I also think, like, no offense, because I had so much fun, no offense to the Reddit community, because I had so much fun reading like true deranged fan theory during season 1, but it also felt like the show was not trying to like pay that off. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't the zigs and the zags, like when Jackie died of natural causes, essentially, I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense than all the like,
Yes.
ooh, Jackie is in this other timeline and like
Right.
the baby is Jackie or, or Callie is Jackie or whatever. And it's,
Callie is Javi.
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's I just want I'm taking us off on digressions again,
No,
but
please.
that is I
We
do
love
like
digressions.
the handling because I'm like a very I'm like averse to kind of hallucinations and stuff in entertainment generally, where I'm like, just make it happen in the story, like illustrate this with like what's actually happening to the characters. A lot of the time, with a few exceptions. I thought that the hallucination episode in the second season of Reservation Dogs, the mushrooms episode, was really fun. But
Oh my God.
with Kirk Fox and
I love that show so
like
much.
it's great. But so this, I think I like not having everything illustrated just through hallucination.
Yeah. I think this show is why I think there are a lot of people who were hurt by Lost and who are trying to like make
Yes.
this show atone for the crimes of Lost.
Agreed.
And it's not this show's job to do that. I think what's satisfying about the ambiguity in this show is that the girls are also struggling with it, and that's why things are ambiguous for us as well. The show's not trying to trick us or hide anything from us that the girls
Yeah.
have access to.
It's not. I do feel like there's a little hiding the ball occasionally that I'll get to later that I'm like, okay, enough. But but the supernatural stuff really feels like it is part of the fabric of the show and not just an attempt to like forestall answering questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it also feels so true to like, if you actually think what it would be like to be 17 years old in
Yes.
the 90s, trapped in the woods. We've talked about this. I would be making altars and like coming up with like
Totally.
prayers and spells and everything to try to make things better. Like, I would absolutely be searching for some meaning in all of it, you know?
For sure. So there's the one last thread from 96, right? That we could do.
Javi.
Other than Ben becoming openly hostile to the
I know.
Yellowjackets about their eating people.
I mean, I got to applaud him for finally just being like, you guys are fucking weird.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
that's fucked up of you to do.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's the one adult left, and I think he's seeing it doesn't matter anymore. And he's like, well, they're going to either eat me or kill me, or I'm going to die, and who knows? So
I should have just stayed with my boyfriend in New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
seriously, Paul. I know that we're going to get a couple more Paul moments, which just as somebody who like moved to New York City in 99, the apartment porn is
I know.
pleasant for me. I
Oh,
appreciate
right.
it.
Because he lived in the city, right? Ben was,
Yeah, he was a
that
writer
was
in
the
the
choice,
city.
right? It was to
Yeah.
move to the city with Paul,
Yeah.
not to move out of New Jersey.
Yeah, I was like speculating like what neighborhood he might be in, and I'm
Yeah,
still
real
in
Friends
Astoria.
vibes.
So yeah, exactly. I lived in Astoria for most of my 20s,
Hell
so
yeah.
I was like, I wonder, Brooklyn, Queens,
Yeah,
who
but
knows?
Javi.
Javi.
I called it. I said he was still alive.
She knew it. You and Lottie both.
I had no reason to think that, but
I kind of felt like when Nat went down the path of like trying to prove he was dead, I was like, ooh, this is
he's
gonna
gonna come
backfire
back.
because he's gonna
Yep.
be alive. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, as soon as Lottie was like, no, I think he's alive, I was like, okay, we've seen enough of Lottie's like premonitions pay off
Yeah.
that I think that that's where this is going. But yeah, seeing him like running in the woods like an animal and having Ty and Van like chase him down, he looked terrified.
Well, they find him, so Ty and Van has convinced Ty to look for what would be, I guess, like final symbol on the map.
Yeah.
And Ty is pretty, like Van's ready to head back. And Ty wants them to stay. And I think it's more so Ty can say like, see, you thought we
really
were going to
tried.
find it.
Yeah. We
and
looked at
there's
every
nothing.
tree. There was nothing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then they found it was like a warm patch of ground, right, with like
Yeah.
with like moss growing out where this
Yeah.
from like a gap in the snow.
Right. And then
We keep seeing that, hinting at some sort of underground source of warmth.
Yeah.
And then that's when we hear some rustling and we see a shadow kind of run by, and they go chasing after him, and it's Javi, who's seemingly gone pretty feral pretty
Yeah.
quickly. The interesting thing about Javi's survival is it seems like he's been hanging around the cabin. It's not that he was like way off somewhere else. We think maybe
In a mine shaft.
which I mean, possibly also that, but it's not that. It seems that it's not that he's been away from the cabin because he couldn't find his way back. It seems like he's intentionally staying away, that he's like popping in maybe to take bear meat and a lantern.
Right, because someone has been eating the bear meat.
Yes, Javi has been eating the bear meat.
We think it's Javi, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
In my head, he's been hiding like under the cabin or near the cabin and has been watching them go completely feral and is like, absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know what's happening. I don't like this. I'm going to hide out. And then
when
they found him.
when they bring him back, Travis gives him a hug, a big hug, and he's like not hostile, but he's kind of limp, like not super reactive to seeing his brother, which is like an unexpected. You'd expect him to either kind of like be wild, right, having lived in the woods for however long, and like let the woods claim him, or like relief, and you get neither, which is again a very interesting choice.
I've been seeing some speculation online that that's not Javi, that it's like a magical manifestation, and I don't want to like shoot down anybody's theories because people are having a good time, but imagine this show being so ambiguous and being so like unwilling to give us a hard answer, and then suddenly we find out that there's like a magical dark Javi running around in the woods.
Yeah, that feels like outside the scope, and that's what I always want with like fantasy, is like at least some parameters on it. And that feels like a like body, and a magical body double feels like that's something where I would be like, we've jumped the shark in a plane that's about to explode.
Exactly.
It just feels like another show.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And yes, it feels like that breaks the rules of the magic that we've learned in a way that is like explosive, not expansive. Whereas like, you thought you were watching this show, psych, it's this show. Rather than like, this is how you were perceiving things, but if you pull out or zoom in, you see it's a little different. This is just like a complete that would be like a complete element of narrative chaos to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like when we think about the scene where we see Jen like quote unquote have rabies, right, and like leaping at Ben, it doesn't make sense that suddenly she's turned into a demon, but it certainly makes sense that he's so hungry, that he's hallucinating and like hasn't eaten or slept. So yeah, should we jump to 2021, because this is always what happens with Andrea and I. We just get so excited that we talk for 2 hours.
Let's go to 2021.
You have time to get out of here.
Yes, I'm trying to think of the beginning of what happened at the beginning of 2021 in this episode.
So we start with Ty in Jess's apartment.
Oh yeah,
looking for the information on Van.
Right.
And she sees herself. This is like 2 ties.
Yes.
2 ties in the apartment.
And she's in Jess's apartment, and she has the folder. She's in her car now, right, with the folder labeled Yellowjackets. And we haven't seen Jess. Like, we don't know what became of her. We just know she nodded out and got into a low-speed car accident.
Yes.
So might be dead. Might not be.
The more I think about it, the more I think she's not dead, because it's a big deal that Shauna has murdered someone, and we don't feel the same way about Misty. And if Jess has died, Misty is also a murderer, and
we're also getting news about Adam's death, right? Like the local news is like, this guy was murdered. And like, I think it would have hit Misty's Crime Stopper radar that like Jess, who was poisoned behind the wheel and crashed the car, has died of poison.
Exactly.
Right. Because she's on every police blotter.
Yeah, she would be
like
looking
20
for
miles.
that, I think.
That's true. So she may not be gone.
But we have not seen her.
No, we haven't.
No, but the show very carefully shows Ty calling her last week and then in her apartment this week, and we don't know what happened in between.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Andrea and I have decided that she was driving from New Jersey to Ohio.
That's where we think Van's
That's where we think Van is.
Sure.
Makes
she's
sense.
going west, right? That's what
she's
she
going
does.
west.
She gets picked up. She runs out of gas because she's in a fugue state and doesn't fill up her car, and then gets picked up by a truck driver.
She's also from Jersey, so she might not know how to pump her own gas.
That's
so
true.
when she gets past the state borders.
But fortunately, she's picked up by a truck driver from New Jersey who voted for her.
Yes. And so we talked about somebody said, how would you possibly recognize a state senator from New Jersey? And I have to say, New Jerseyans and Rhode Islanders are very proud of their fucked up, weird politicians and have a lot of attachment to them. And if my politician was a suspected cannibal that was in a plane crash, I would know exactly who she was.
Yeah. I think so.
So, yeah.
Especially if he's in her jurisdiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
totally.
that's the least believable part of all this, because I think we have 40 state senators. So
Andrea looked it up.
And New Jersey, we're a very populated state, but we're not a very large state.
Sure.
So
Right.
those are small,
Yeah.
But
Small districts.
But this is a show that is really kind of like overwhelmed by coincidence in a lot of ways. So this one I'm okay to roll
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And so he drives her west.
Yes.
And that's basically the Thaisa storyline until the very end, right?
Yes.
She's
Yeah.
in this truck with this guy who seems crude but not sinister.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
He's
Just
got like a
chill.
horny pen.
Yes.
Got the nudie pen.
I love
Classic
it.
trucker pen.
So fun.
Yeah, exactly. But yet he voted for like a progressive black lesbian,
Yeah.
which, yeah, awesome. I love
Seems
that.
like a
Yeah, that's
sweetie
pretty
pie.
much Ty's. Yeah, that's pretty much Ty's whole arc is
Yep.
just moving west.
Yep.
Until.
And then so we get Shauna realizes Shauna and Jeff are making breakfast. It's tense. Callie's like, I'm staying at my friend's house, Alana's house. Shauna, while out running errands, sees Alana's mother. Again, another coincidence, but like a very
Yep.
believable coincidence in a small
Yep.
town. She's like, no, I haven't seen Callie in months. Shauna snoops, realizes Callie's been out fucking, or actually staying at home and fucking, right?
Yeah.
Because there's like a, yeah.
Yeah.
And kidnaps her, takes her on a drive.
With no cell service.
Down to the Pine Barrens to murder her.
Yeah.
It seems.
Yep. And
Yeah,
then
because she finds the license.
Yeah.
yes, she's found it. Yeah, one episode or two episodes ago,
Yeah.
right? Found it in the grill. And so Callie confronts Shauna, goes, where have you been staying? And she's like, well, do you have anything you want to tell me? And she's like, did you kill him? And Shauna's like, yeah, we killed
Yeah,
him.
got me.
I killed him, and your dad is mixed up in this too. He's been doing blackmail and that to like keep it on the Shauna storyline, right?
Yeah.
So that happens. Then Shauna and Jeff, that's kind of the last we see of Shauna till the end, more or less,
Yeah.
right? And she and Jeff are cooking. And Shauna's like, I told Callie everything. She's cool with it. And Jeff is like, what the fuck? And then Callie's like, hey, can I help make dinner? I've been
Yeah.
drinking in the park, but I don't want to do that anymore.
I just,
And it's like this eerie blue velvet suburbia, right? That
Yeah.
when she's chopping the cucumbers and Jeff is like, I guess Shauna was right. Oh, and also Jeff says that police know about the affair because I heard Kevin
Yeah.
at the gym.
I overheard.
overheard.
Everybody's lying to everybody.
All the
except-
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except let's tell our teenage daughter all of
Yep.
it.
Well, it's
Yep.
and it's such a good example of Shauna doing Shauna stuff where it's like she didn't tell her because I don't get the impression she actually told her because she wanted to be honest with her daughter and thought her daughter deserved that. She needs her daughter on her side. She needs to make sure that her daughter's not going to snitch.
Yeah.
And Jeff is way more concerned. He even says with protecting her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now they're all in it together, so
Yep.
that seems to have brought Callie some kind of like I don't know. I don't know how I think she feels in this scene.
She looked pretty fucked up by it at first.
Definitely fucked up by it, but less like uncertain and like it definitely, she feels like a sense of direction that she hadn't had in the past, right? Like where she was just like avoiding the family, whether she's like, I've turned against my family secretly and I need to like keep them close so I know what's going on. Or she's
Right.
like, oh, I understand their fucked up dynamic and I'm a part of it. Like wherever she is on that spectrum,
Right.
she's like, she feels purposeful
Right.
and less like reactive and adrift.
Yeah. And Melanie Linsky in the scene where they're outside the car is just so fucking delightful.
Oh, she's amazing.
She refers back to her, like she basically turns back into a teenager talking to her own teenager. The way she's like, her physicality in that moment is
Yeah.
so good. It's
And the little
so
like,
good.
no, that's a
Yeah.
lie too. Like she's had some really like really cutting the Emmy reel this episode and last episode
I
where she's
know.
got the gun at the chop shop.
Yep.
so
Have you ever
good.
pulled the skin off a human corpse?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so good.
Yeah. Oh my God. She's a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's the Shauna, Jeff, Callie stuff mostly, right? And then
Yeah.
And then
we have Misty and Walter, which is a little bit less, and then
Yep.
I think the Lottie stuff is like pretty
yeah,
big.
Misty and Walter are pursuing the purple people, which I
Yes.
don't know that they think that's Lottie's cult, right? That's what Misty thinks. I think she's made the connection, right?
I guess it hasn't been made explicit that she actually knows what she's
I have
looking
been
for.
assuming that all along, but I think you're right. I don't think she
Yeah.
has said out loud, "We're going to find my friend Lottie's cult."
But
Right.
what is her connection with the purple people other than that? Or maybe she
Randy-
doesn't know it's Lottie, but she knows it's who took Nat. Sorry.
Yeah, Randy
Yes.
told them that there had been a bunch of people in purple hanging
Right.
around the hotel when
Yep.
Nat
Yes.
disappeared. They
Right,
have
right,
her
right.
address because they
Of the
used a
credit card.
credit card in the soda machine.
Right.
buy
So they
Fanta.
might
Walter-
not know it's Lottie.
Yeah, I didn't even
But-
think about that. Wow.
But they
Yeah.
know she knows it's who took Nat.
Yes.
Because who is the person? This is something I forgot and haven't looked to check. Who's the person at the end of episode 10 of season 1 that's like, who's Lottie? Right?
Oh, that was Nat's sponsor. who
Got
she
it.
had
Okay.
bribed or blackmailed into
Yep.
getting Travis's bank records.
Yes, of course.
Why have I watched this show so many times?
No, but that makes sense because I was like, someone knows it's Lottie.
Yeah.
But it was just
Yeah.
Nat's sponsor who's like out of the picture at this point.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see Misty and Walter as like kind of two sides of the same fucked up
Yeah.
broken coin.
Yeah.
yeah,
Play
they
show tunes in the car.
yeah.
Play tunes in the car. Misty kind of freaks out and asks if he's like, "Oh, you're one of those like fucked up Yellowjackets
Super fans.
obsessives," and he's like,
Yeah.
"No, I just also love musicals." And then when we get to the end of the episode where they're staying in adjacent rooms at a bed and breakfast near where Lottie's compound is, they are they have the exact same weird hotel room routine, right? Of like
I loved it.
both of
Yeah.
which they learned from listening to true crime podcasts
Yes.
obsessively.
Yes.
They're both
putting the remote
Playing.
control in a plastic bag.
Yep.
and- yeah.
they're,
Checking for bugs.
they're
Yep.
so fun to watch. I could watch a show that is just the two of them.
Yeah.
This Walter is an example of the thing that I think a lot of people wrestle with the show is that like who really is on the surface, what they say, and who isn't, and who's hiding more. And I so desperately want Walter to be what he's claiming to be with Misty. We learn that he's a millionaire because he got hit in the head.
Yeah.
And I
Scaffolding accident.
just want this to be genuine. I don't know yet if I think that it is.
Someone pointed this out to me on Twitter, and apologies if it was you, Andrea, but someone pointed out, because I was like, I think Jeff is about to do something like stupid that imperils them. And someone was like, the men in this show
That might have been
are
me.
like benign,
Yeah.
like they're very surface level.
Yeah.
Like other than the blackmail, right? Which was like not an actual attempt to harm
Right.
Sean. It was like,
It's what I think a not a stay-at-home dad. It's what I think a suburban dad might resort to. Like I think
Yeah.
it's an action that makes sense, sort of.
but they're not malicious actors.
No.
They're not like,
They're not manipulative.
yeah, again,
Yeah.
the blackmail
So far.
being a big exception,
Right.
but it's
Right.
like Ben doesn't mean any harm, like Travis doesn't mean any harm, like
Yeah.
they have disagreements and like emotional reactions, but Travis like so far hasn't schemed against the Yellowjackets
right.
or
No.
Nat, and it feels, and like this truck driver, which is like a perilous
Yeah.
situation, right? That didn't turn out to be danger. Like it was
Yeah.
like exactly what he said. He was like, I'm just a guy, and like, you know, maybe he's gonna report after, but like he's not doing this to like imperil Thaisa's life in that moment.
Yeah. So far, the most dangerous thing on this show that we know for sure are the women on this show, which I
Yeah.
love. I love that so
And
much.
Adam, right? We think Adam is like kind of the guy he said he was. He was like a weird artist who just like wanted to hook up with this like MILF, I guess
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
the technical
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
and like
fascinating.
I think that the show is purposely playing with that too.
Totally.
And putting us in situations where we're suspicious of the man.
Yes.
You know, like the truck or Adam or all of that. And they're like playing with the expectation that of course the man is going to have sort of suspicious motives and be manipulative, and then it's not, it's the woman.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's even, it's like you said, nobody is as much of a danger to this group as they are to themselves and each other
Exactly.
at this point. And that I think like gets shown over and over again, where like Shauna continually like overpowers and intimidates men, and like it just, yeah. So I feel like not that Walter is always going to be on her side, but I don't know that he's scheming against her yet.
Right.
Maybe he is, though. Maybe he knows that. Maybe he really thinks that she killed Adam, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
it's possible.
Yeah, there's one little note about Misty and Walter, and then I think we should finish up with Nat and Lottie.
Yeah.
Is that when they do leave names, it's a fun little thing, but when they leave their names at the B&B that they stay at, they both leave pseudonyms that are. So she leaves Agatha Christie's, like when she became a Lady Malawan, based on her her husband, and then John Lang is Michael Crichton's pen name.
That's funny.
Yeah, so of course they both do the same kind of thing. But the thing that is interesting to me about him choosing John Lang is that it's an author's pseudonym or pen name that apparently Michael Crichton chose because he didn't want his patients to worry that he would use them in his stories.
Oh, interesting.
And so his, kind of like following Misty around and tying himself to her kind of like scandalous story, I think is there's something about that I just want us all to kind of put a little pin in just in case.
Yeah. So the last story is the Nat, Lottie,
and
Lisa.
I love Nat and Lisa so much together. This makes me so happy.
And this is Nat is in Lottie's house at the compound and is
skulking.
Like, I need your key. That shot is so funny. The reverse shot where you just see her in the doorway and lurking is so funny. And
we've talked about Juliette Lewis's physicality in this a bunch already, but it is incredible.
Her choices are unreal.
It's really funny and like really effective. She's like, I need your keys. And then she
gives them to her.
Yeah.
She gives it to her to go to take Lisa to the farmer's market to sell honey. And she's like, let Lisa drive. She doesn't get to very often and she needs to practice.
So Lisa, why?
Well, because she wants Nat to think she trusts her. And if someone else is driving, Lisa's not going to. I think her hope is that at the very least, Nat won't like drive away with Lisa forever.
And Lisa, they're chatting about like what is choice and what is compulsion on the compound. What are the rules? So I can leave for as long as I want. Well, why is that a rule? And then Lisa takes Nat to her mother's house, Lisa's mother's house, to visit her goldfish.
The 14th
Gilly. 14th Gilly? Is that
14th Gilly?
14th
yes.
Gilly.
This one's gonna make it.
Yep. And it gets very tense very quickly. Lisa's mom is very worried about her with good reason. She thinks she's back for good. Lisa's like, no, I'm just visiting. I'm allowed to visit. And she's like, you're off your meds. And she's like, it's better that way. And meanwhile, we see Lottie going to her psychiatrist's office 5 weeks early, begging to up the dosage of her meds because she's having hallucinations again.
Visions. Yeah.
And her terrible psychiatrist.
Convenient that her psychiatrist.
Yeah, this is the first time where I'm like, maybe the people on Reddit are right, because your psychiatrist's not going to go on sabbatical and not tell you. A good psychiatrist is not going to tell you to lean into your hallucinations. That's all I'll say about that scene.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's malpractice.
Yeah, exactly. So we have that parallel. Lisa stands up to her mother and leaves. Nat does the most hilarious thing. And
speaking of her physicality,
and
spits out the goldfish.
She could have taken the bowl. She could have, but no.
Yeah,
but
that would have been easier.
Apparently, picked up the bowl or scooped out the goldfish, put it in her mouth, spit it out into like a water bottle full of clean water.
Thought about the process of getting this fish into her mouth.
Such a wild decision. Such an impulsive decision to make. I think. But then the two of them have a really touching conversation at the bar. It's a very like, Nat has been in rehab and probably Alcoholics Anonymous and is very like giving her the kind of like one day at a time talk. That seems
it's a very sponsor-sponsy conversation.
Yeah. It's
and then they flip it at the end. Because Nat has a shot in front of her, and Lisa goes, well, do you want to kill yourself? Because that's what Nat was talking about. He said, when I found you had a gun in your mouth. Do you still want to kill yourself? And she goes, not today. And then slides the shot back across the bar away from her.
I know. Oh, I love them together so much. Yeah. I've seen speculation like, Nat's Lisa's mom and blah, blah, blah. And I think it can be enough that they are like these sort of, not opposite sides of the coin, but just so similar in some of their life experiences.
I hope that's not the case. So I will say it does maybe explain a little bit, or it makes interesting a little bit, the scene from last week, Jody, that you and I hated when Travis and Nat are having sex, and he sort of like has a vision of a golden glow Lottie kind of blessing their union. And so if Nat did it seems unlikely that anybody could get pregnant out there for all of the reasons that are happening out there. But if it's because their union was blessed by Lottie, who then brings Lisa and Nat back together.
That feels like
I don't
slightly
like it.
different
right,
show.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that I keep leaning towards people with similar kinds of trauma tend to be drawn together.
And I think it's much more satisfying if that's what it is with these two.
Yeah.
And they help keep...
And on both timelines, it kind of feels like inch by inch, Nat and Lottie are being drawn together.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't see eye to eye on stuff. They don't... they have like real different views of the world and methodologies for how to navigate it. But there is something where like they can't deny that the thing the other one does is at least equally effective, right? Like Lottie is not in as good mental health as she portrays. And so she's like closer to Nat, who's like openly really struggling a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then the both kinds of hunting were like equally fruitless in that moment, right? Like they both lost. And so I think like there's this sense where like maybe we think like Lottie is this supernatural blessed or like hyper capable figure, and Nat is like really always kind of tumbling down a hill. But there's really more similarities. Although, going back 2 episodes, I think, I don't trust Lottie's account of what happened to Travis.
Oh, no. Neither do I.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to drive them back apart, ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, like, we actually see, like, a physical manifestation of that in the tub scene, going back to 96 real quick, where, like, Nat and Lottie are kind of, like, having that good game handshake moment of, like, you know, they're physically bringing them back together.
Exactly.
Yes. And I kind of think that's what's happening on this timeline too, where like I think Nat seeing Lisa with her mother and is like, oh, this like absolutely bonkers compound that Lottie runs does seem to be having some kind of stabilizing effect through like maybe not mysticism, but like homeopathy and like alternative to Western medicine.
And also just removing her from a pretty toxic household.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And I think the fact you mentioned the mysticism there. It's something that is pretty clear this week that I wasn't sure would be the case, is that the community itself isn't really steeped in that. That's something that's like very like Lottie's thing. Like when she goes,
like the blood offering at the stump
and
at
all
the very
of that.
end.
Yeah. This isn't like a group of people who think that it doesn't seem like they're all making blood offerings every week. Like this is something Lottie has
apparently honey in a farmer's market.
Exactly. Not done in a very long time. She's back at her.
But they did bury the guy as like there's a lot of the elements of this kind of like occult supernatural with just the occultness taken away. It's like church without God.
Yeah. They're kind of playing at it, feels like. Except now Lottie is back in her office and she's going through gratitude entries and
finds the Queen of Hearts.
Which we still don't really know what it is, but we think it's associated with sacrifice and stuff in the wilderness. She's obviously distressed by it. Yep. And we see her walk back out into a more secluded part of the camp or whatever, and she kneels down at another one of those stumps. It's another kind of holdover from the wilderness, and she cuts her palm and
she says, "Can this just be enough?"
Please.
Can this just be enough? And there was, I think the other important Lottie thing is like, as an adult, she is like actively resisting the supernatural, right? Like she's not there because she's like, oh, I have visions and this is what, like you were saying, this is what makes me a good spiritual leader. She's like, she says to the assistant psychiatrist, she's like, the last time this happened, it was really bad and it like fucked up shit happened and I can't let it happen again. Like it's not productive. It's not good.
Yeah.
And like whether or not she like fully believes that it's not real, she's like, I can't let this happen again because it is such a destructive force.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
No, for sure. I also thought it was just interesting that this is me being like on Reddit too much, but she's walking down those stairs with the two with the lights on either side of it. It very much looked like one of the underground hallucination scenes that she had earlier in season 1.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then there's only one more thing, which is Thaisa is traveling west to find Van.
While you were streaming.
While you were streaming her video rental service, or video rental business.
It's our girl Sandy.
Never fails to delight me.
Yeah.
And she finds Van there, and she's like, Van, and she recognizes her, right? She's like, Ty. And that's kind of all we get of them.
Ty fusses with her hair a little bit before she walks in, and my heart breaks. It is.
Yes.
Yep.
She just even. Just.
What was the music playing when she went in? I remember being like clocking it, being like, yeah, this is the right music for a lesbian analog video rental establishment.
It says it's the people who actually write the music for the show. It's called Not a Game.
Okay. Maybe
Craig
I was thinking
Wedgerman.
of a different moment then. But
was it Angst in My Pants, the Spark song for Misty and Walter?
Oh, that's funny.
Good.
That was so good.
But this is the one moment, the one thing about season 1 that kind of like lingeringly and enduringly I'm like, come on, is that the hiding the ball thing is that like there's so little talk about the other living or possibly living Yellowjackets in a way that it feels like by the end of the season, when they're like in full frenzy considering every possibility, it seems like someone would be like, has anyone talked to Van?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like her name just doesn't
true.
get brought up. And like they mentioned Lottie very briefly to be like, the last I heard, she was in an institution. And it's like, it just feels like that's the thing that feels like partly like you reveal the story bit by bit. But that was one little thing that I found very frustrating is that they like, it feels like that the 4 Yellowjackets that are like in communication have an awareness that there are other Yellowjackets out there and then do not loop them into whatever's happening.
Right.
And maybe we'll learn now why. Maybe Van is like, if you ever contact me again, I'll kill you and myself or whatever. But like, it does feel, I was like, nobody's mentioning them while someone is contacting all of you for blackmail reasons.
Yeah, that's the thing is because I know that my guess the practical reason for not showing them is you want to make sure you save some decisions, like if you say where everybody is, but you can still talk around it, and that is really interesting. But this reveal of Van though paid off for me so
great
much.
And I love all of it when it happens, but I still am like, nobody's said Van in the present timeline, and that just feels so weird to me. That like again, like you said, the only reason is to save that reveal, which is great.
But you could still say like,
hey, what's up with Van? And then have Thaisa lie.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do think though that there is something to what you said, Josh, about how like maybe Van was like, leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
Like this, I am going to live my quiet little, like, you know, country lesbian life in some little town in Ohio and rent videos, and I don't want anything to do with this anymore.
Totally. Yeah. Like I think that is a kind of decision, right? Like to show her renting videos is like, I am off the grid. I don't participate in the internet. Is like it's like she's like living an analog life. And
the flip side of that is also being stuck in a time that, you know, is no longer and refusing to leave it.
Totally. Yeah. For sure. Right. While you're streaming is a very 90s reference.
And it's a reference to Van's, you know, our girl Sandy speech in season one around the fire.
Yeah. Recounting the entire plot of the movie.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This was really fun. I hope I didn't yammer too much. I know
it was a goddamn delight.
No, this was so fun. It was so happy to have you here. Anything you want to let folks know you got coming up, where they can find you, all that good stuff?
I have a ton of tour dates coming up. Philly, which is not New Jersey, but it's close.
It's so close. That's where I am right now. I will see you there.
Oh, hell yeah. In May, I'm going to Wilmington, North Carolina this week. Then Philly and Spokane and Seattle in May, and then just like all over the place. Midwest in May and June, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Kansas City.
All over the place. You were kidding.
Southeast in August, California, up and down California in July. You can find that all on joshgondelman.com.
which I'll link to in the show
schedule.
notes.
And then I have a special called People Pleaser that in the United States you can watch for free on YouTube. And then I do, if you're curious about anything, if you're like, what's this guy up to normally? You don't have to surveil me in a Crime Stoppers
in fact,
message
please
board
don't.
style. I have a weekly newsletter called That's Marvelous.
Which
that
is delightful, by the way.
Absolute
you.
joy.
Yes.
It's full of pep talks.
I am a subscriber.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Yes.
I send it out every Monday morning ? And that has upcoming tour dates and links to like podcast appearances and general things I'm up to, stuff I've been writing. And I wrote on the most recent season of Mrs. Maisel.
Amazing.
That's right. That's
Or
so
the current
you're
season.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Except
it's
New
annoying.
England, Josh. When are you coming back?
I know. Providence too is like one that I'm trying to
Everybody
do.
skips Providence when they go to Boston, and
It's
I'm
so
just like,
close is the problem.
it's so close, and
But
there's
I think-
but there's such a good community here.
I know. I really like Providence. My
Yeah.
worry is just that like, and I don't think this is even valid, but my worry is that the people who would have come to see me in Providence would have come to Boston. And,
A lot
and
of us
nobody
are
will
way
come.
too lazy.
I love that. I
do
respect
that.
it. Yeah.
So
Very New England. Like I'm not gonna take a 35-minute train ride. I respect it. Again, it's a lot of respect to like New England localism.
yes, yes, we're very sort of provincial in that
Love it.
way.
Yeah, I respect it.
Well,
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
having
so,
me. This
so
was such a
much.
joy. Can't wait to see how the season unfolds.
It's been a delight.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you again.
Me too.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had to let Josh on his merry way because not everybody spends 3 hours a week talking about the most recent episode of Yellowjackets.
Yes, but we would like to thank Josh for his time and insight, and for being our first official guest.
Yeah.
Absolutely delightful. And I think
So fun and so smart and so
Yes.
thoughtful about the show, which I figured he would be. And also, we got through our recap in an hour, which we've never done before. So, but let's ruin that by going back. And I think there are a couple of little loose ends we'd like to make sure we address.
yeah.
It's the first thing is, I think for you, Jody, we have talked every week since this show started about how excited you were as a person to have Lauren Ambrose on your screen again. So I'd like to give you a moment if you'd like.
Just to wax poetic about
Yeah.
how much I love Lauren Ambrose.
Exactly.
So it has been alluded to on this podcast that I am an artist. I also am started as a photographer. And Claire on 6 Feet Under was just a very important character to me. Similar age, similar. I did not live in a funeral home, but I did have an ill father. And I really, really related hard to Claire and her teen angst and her sort of dealing with her teen angst through art and questionable men. And like, I just was she could not be more perfect for this role. And the fact that she watched season 1 and really loved the show and then got to be a part of it. Like she's brought that up in interviews. I wish we had more of her this season. I wish we'd gotten introduced to her earlier, although I understand why we weren't. But I do think, so one thing that I found out from watching an interview with Tawny Cypress, who one day we will get on this podcast. I'm obsessed. I can't. She's like my Mount Rushmore.
My Mount Rushmore for this show is Tawny, Hanif Abdurakeem, Josh Gondelman. So we've got
we
one.
got one of them.
I think they're my big 3. I have a few others, but they're the
Yeah.
ones who like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously anybody from the show, but I just think Tawny I think we would vibe with her big time.
Well, and we'd all end up sounding extremely Jersey by the end of
How
it.
horrific for our listeners.
I know. But so the reason I brought that up was just because I watched an interview with her recently where she said that in her mind, she and Ty and Van, not Tawny, Ty and Van stayed together for a bit after they left the wilderness.
Now, that's not something she's confirming is canon for the show. That's just how she's approaching this
I believe so,
right now?
yeah.
Okay,
but I mean,
interesting.
she knows at least what happens in this season, you know? And so I think that we're seeing this split between the two of them really develop in Van being so drawn to Lottie and Lottie's sort of mysticism And we're seeing that divide really kind of deepen between them, I think, through Van seemingly kind of like pushing her agenda onto Ty with the symbol in the woods and
We
stuff.
talked about that a little bit with Josh, and I do think it is kind of, I love Van, but it is a little problematic that she is just,
I mean, this is not something that Ty is like necessarily comfortable with.
Exactly.
But that comment made me think that whatever divisions are brewing, they're not going to fully drive them apart in the woods, at least not that we know of, or not that Tawny knows of at this point. It'll be interesting to see if that bears out. But at least I think it tells us that this season, we're not going to see them like stop speaking to each other or anything. And I mean, you know, if you're trapped in the woods with a person that you love, like you just kind of got to make it work.
Yeah, I think, and I think it would be a kind of cruelty that the viewers don't need to have to watch these two on top of everything else deal with a breakup out in the woods.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, especially when, as we've said, I get the feeling that Ty is going to come back and really want to pretend like her life can just pick back up where it left off. And I don't get the impression that Van will be of the same mindset. So I could see once they get back, the different ways the two of them deal with it really being the thing that drives them apart.
Yeah. And I mean, it also, if we can remember back to being that age, when they get back from the woods, they're probably 19, right? Then, you know, you go off to college. We know that Ty did that. Like, life stuff starts to happen. You're not in this really intense situation anymore. And it could just be that like their lives didn't align anymore in that way as well. I mean, when you've gone through something so tragic with someone, you either are like permanently bonded for life and have to like stay in that space, or you have to really get away from that person.
Yeah, right, exactly.
To really be able to move on at all. So, but I mean, my favorite part of this episode was probably seeing just that little glimpse of Van's shop. Because it's just so perfect. And that moment when Ty fixes her hair that you notice, I love that too.
But you also, Lauren Ambrose's face, she's another face actor. Every emotion washes over her in that moment, to the point where I don't know how she's going to respond to Ty.
She didn't look thrilled.
No, but she did. But it's hard to say. She seemed, you know, it's like fight, flight, or freeze or fawn, I think.
Or fawn, yeah.
But I get the feeling that she kind of cycled through all of those in her head, and at the moment is landed on kind of freezing.
Yeah.
And we'll see what actually happens. Reddit has made a lot of this. I know everybody's already had plenty of time to talk about it, but do we want to talk a little bit about those movies?
I mean, I think just the fact, the combination is what makes it magical.
Funny.
The combination of Bound, Wayne's World, Mean Girls, Into the Wild, Footloose, Varsity Blues, and Trainspotting.
This is the show having a fun time with us, right? Like, I think it seems like people are trying to make a lot of like what messages Van is communicating. And I don't know that really matters that much here.
No, I think it's just so like, it's so representative of the time and also like just funnily descriptive of their lives. Right.
Yeah.
Like we talked at the beginning with Josh about the tone of the show and how it goes back and forth between like super serious and horrific and trauma based, and also is silly and campy. And so it's like, yes, Wayne's World exists in the same universe as Trainspotting. Like it's all of a piece of their experience,
right?
You know, as does Bound, as does Mean Girls. Like it's all little pieces of that experience.
It's so, I think it's not the funniest movie in the bunch, but when I saw Bound like right at the top, I think it's the first one in the list, I laughed out loud. Like the gay 90s movie, like the lesbian 90s movie. I should be very specific because that matters. Yeah. So funny.
I know. And it, you know, it's all little pieces of who Van is and was. I don't know that it's doing any future casting in any way, but I do think that everything that we're seeing of Van so far in this tiny little snippet, she's either trapped in the past, has chosen to live in the past, like, or is just fully removing herself from modern life because of maybe the fame of the Yellowjackets, like, you know, the fact that it's there's like a Be Kind Rewind. So I worked in a video store, so did you.
So did I.
Like, you know,
again,
it's just
a show made
just
weirdly specifically for the two of us.
I mean, I worked at a video store called Empire Video. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was not as cool as the record store.
No, nothing is as cool as Empire Records, but it's okay.
But so yeah, the movies I think are just meant to give us a little, you know, reminder of everything they've been through the lens of cinema in some ways. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to say about Van and Ty. I can't wait to see them interact with each other.
I will say, I hope it goes. It's not going to go well, but I hope there's some tenderness there for me. I need that.
So I don't know if I should say this then, because did you watch the interview I sent you with Tawny?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Let's leave a little spoiler tag here. If you don't want to hear what Tawny said about Van and Ty's interactions, it was vague, but I think it gives a direction. So skip over like a minute. But basically, in that interview that I watched, Tawny said that the only thing she could say about her interactions, the interactions between Van and Ty in the present timeline, is we're going to get the scene that we want. So, I don't know. I mean, Tawny's a queer woman.
She knows what we want. Tawny knows what we want.
I think she knows what her audience is looking for. So I do think that they are going to reconnect in some way. So I don't know. Somebody said, I hope that scene includes pretzels in a carriage in the park. Because remember, that's what Van says. She wanted to go to New York City and take a carriage ride and eat pretzels in the carriage. It's
important for us to remember that Ty's wife is back in Jersey in a coma, though. So I do want to temper our kind of rose-colored glasses with this,
and she's in a coma because we think that bad Ty or other Ty, like, you know, didn't turn away from an accident or turned into one on purpose. And Sammy's having a Home Alone situation.
That's right.
He's setting up obstacles for robbers
and other Ty, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing I just wanted to mention, we didn't talk at all about Akilah. She's like kind of a small piece of this.
Yeah, but
I think in the past couple of episodes
we have seen
Chekhov's mouse, yes. But we have seen Akilah as the one in the group that is still pretty tied to home. Like, she's studying for the SAT.
Yeah.
She mentions that when they get back, she's still going to be a junior and is going to have to take the SAT. She mentions her sister's kid and how she's an aunt and she misses him. And like, she's the only person that I remember hearing talk about home or going home or seeing home again in this situation that they're in. And I think that maybe doesn't bode well for Akilah's survival.
I was just trying to think if anybody else has. And Jackie mentions really wanting a cheesesteak at one point, and we know how things ended up for Jackie.
He became the cheesesteak.
Yeah. And Akilah she goes looking for the dripping sound with Mari, and she finds this little mouse and immediately saves it and immediately knows she doesn't want the other girls to know about the mouse. I don't know that she's worried that they're going to eat it because I don't know what that's going to like, but she feels protective of it for sure.
Yeah. And I've mentioned the show Alone on this podcast before, but the folks on Alone eat a lot of mice. They're not very filling. They don't have a lot of calories, but it's something.
Right.
And so if Akilah was fully in survival mode and in, I don't know how long I'm going to have to be out here mode, if she didn't share that mouse, she would have at least eaten the mouse.
Oh, that's really interesting. Because
the mouse split like, 12 ways is nothing. But
I was thinking of it where like she's worried that the girls are going to take it from her to eat it, as opposed to it being a symbol of like the fact that she's not eating it is telling us
she's not fully.
But either way, where we're learning that here, and What a way to endear us to a character we haven't spent much time with, which makes me nervous.
Yeah.
I'm less annoyed. I think a lot of people seem to be annoyed with the like sudden introduction of characters that we've not spent any time with before. And I don't know if it's just because I don't know if it's because I haven't watched as much TV as most people lately, even though I do really love it. I haven't watched, you and Josh talked about a couple of shows that I've not seen at all. So I'm just used to like episodic television where like, I don't know, sometimes characters show up and we just pretend they've been there I'm not struggling with this.
I don't have a real problem with it either. I think if they had immediately gone into some super dramatic plot involving like Jen or one of the other
kind of reminding
actors,
us like, hey, these people
still
are here,
here.
so start thinking about them. I think that's okay.
They haven't like taken them from 0 to 60. It's kind of like they're still there. They're just a little bit more visible. And Aquila was present in the first season and had a few lines at least and was a character that we knew about. So having Aquila get developed a little further makes sense. So it doesn't bother me partly for that reason. It's like they're background characters that we're just starting to see a little bit more. And I think they're slowly going to become more a part of it instead of like all of a sudden. I think part of the reason people reacted that way, I think, is because of the cheekiness of the initial moment where we saw them all sitting together. And it was this sort of like, hey, we've been here all along. It was like this little cheesy moment to acknowledge what they were doing, which I thought was funny. But I think it also was maybe a little jarring for people.
I could see that. All right.
Yeah. But they kind of then went to, I think, what their plan was all along, which was to slowly bring them in more.
And I think some people are starting to get bored of certain character stories in the present. And so I think, and I sort of get it. Like, I think Shauna in particular, people are starting to tire of the back and forth there with this. I'm still invested and I'm still curious to see how that plays out. But and I'm not saying that we're going to suddenly have Aquila in our 2021 having her own storyline. That's not what I mean. But if we want new things to happen, we have to introduce new elements.
Yeah, like Lisa.
For example. Yep.
Lisa in 2021, I think, is a great addition to the story because she reflects
her so much
back at the characters, parts of their character.
Exactly.
Right. Like she, to me, actually, this came from our conversation with Josh. It started me thinking about because he was talking about how Nat and Lottie are kind of being drawn together in a way in the present and in the past. And Lisa in the present is a little bit Nat and a little bit Lottie.
Yeah.
Like she subscribes to Lottie's sort of mysticism or whatever you want to call it, healing practices. But she also has the like suicidality and the sort of fucked up mom relationship. It seems like,
and it's just more. I guess Lottie is vexed too, as we're learning, but more outwardly.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that's on your plate for Yellowjackets episode 4, Old Wounds, that we want to talk about? Or are we ready to wrap it up?
I don't
for
think
next
so.
week?
I do want to kind of put a pin in this game in the woods, this competition, thinking that it may be some foreshadowing. As with all of the references to cards that we've been getting, like they're ramping up the card references. Like at one point in the show, I think it's Crystal is just holding a 6 of hearts, and Crystal and Misty are playing cards together, like, and the Queen of Hearts. It's just, we're going to get some sort of like explanation of all of this kind of soon, I think. And watching sort of Misty refereeing this competition between Nat and Lottie in the woods where they have to go out and like come back with game. I think that we're getting some groundwork laid for whatever hunt we may have seen in episode 1 of season 1. So that's it. That's what I've got.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see, as I am every week, to see where things go. I have something to plug. I feel like I don't do that often, but I have something that I'm really excited about that I want to share.
Do it.
Listeners know Left of the Dial, my other podcast, which Jody was a recent guest on. And in that episode, we talked about a band that I really love, Screaming Females, who are a Jersey band and who aren't a 90s Jersey band, but are very like influenced, I would say, by the sound of the 90s. And they're just one of the best bands for real. And they're playing a show in Baltimore at a venue called Autobar, which is one of the best venues in the country, on April 23rd, which sounds like it doesn't matter to anybody unless you're in Baltimore, but Left of the Dial is going to be there live streaming it. So we're going to bring our camera crew, who are incredible. You can see some of the stuff we've shot over at leftofthedial.fm if you want to make sure it's worth spending your money on, but I promise it will be. We have, like I said, a really incredible camera crew who kind of specialize in shooting live music in venues like this. And you can get tickets. You can get them at leftofthedial.fm. And I think probably at Screaming Females website as well. Links will be all over my social media and Left of the Dial. I've said it already on this episode. One of the best bands in the world. Marissa, their front person, is like one of the greatest living guitar players. That's not me being hyperbolic. She just is. They're the best. We've worked with them before. And like I said, Autobar is a venue that is an incredible venue. And it's one that we've shot in before. So it's just going to be a really, really fantastic show, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. And if you like the music of Yellowjackets and you're not a fan of Screaming Females, it's probably just because you haven't checked them out yet.
Yes.
So like check them out.
That is a true statement.
Their new album, Desire Pathway, is so far my record of the year for 2023, and I think it's going to be difficult for anything to unseat it. And that's saying something, because Fall Out Boy put a new album out this year and they're my favorite band. Don't let that tint how you see my opinion on Screaming Females. Leftofthedial.fm. Find us on Twitter, Left of the Dial PC, or Instagram, Left of the Dial FM. I'll drop a link in the show notes. But I promise it's going to be a really cool show. So if you're looking for something to do on the night of the 23rd, that's this Sunday. Check it out.
Very soon.
That's all I got.
Cool.
Jody, you want to take us home?
I got no plugs. So follow us on WatchersPodNJ on Instagram and Twitter. Andrea puts together fun little clips of our moments. And you can follow me if you are interested in weird arty things at Jody_Mib on Instagram. Things. Yeah, I make stuff. I don't know how to explain it, and I don't want to. So just go to my Instagram.
That. I'm at AQ Andrea Q on everything. The AQ does not stand for Antler Queen, but it could.
It could.
Also, thank you so much to people who've been listening and liking the show. We've gotten
some nice feedback on like Reddit, and we appreciate y'all. We're just kind of doing this because we want to, not because anyone's paying us. So
exactly.
Nice to hear good feedback.
Yeah, and I say it every week, but if you do like the show, it would be so nice, and we'd be so thankful if you'd head on over to your podcatcher of choice that you're listening to us right now and leave us a little review. It doesn't have to be a long one. If you drop in what songs, like I said, you're still hoping to hear in the show, or maybe what 90s artists you want to hear tackle No Return. We'll share those. Like I said, Screaming Females isn't a 90s band, but they were the first ones I thought of. They would crush a cover of
yes, they would.
Of No Return.
Yes, they would. Yeah, tell your friends. Tell your enemies.
Tell your frenemies.
Tell your frenemies. Yes, I mean, perfect for this show. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.